Welcome back to Touring America. Today we're going to work on getting our Shiloh tank bag electrified. We showed you how to install it a couple episodes ago, and now we're going to get power into it so that we can do all the electrical things that you need. And what you see here is all the stuff we're going to use to make that happen. So stick around, we'll walk you through it step by step.
Hey, we're wires from Greensboro and North Carolina.
Today we're going to work on getting power from the battery of this K1600 GTL into the Shiloh tank bag that we installed a couple of episodes ago. We're going to do that so we can get some chargers going primarily. We're going to want to be able to charge our phones, our iPads, our Sena Prism battery charger, and also our Sena 20S headset. Besides charging, we're also going to be able to power our heated gear through a direct plug-in to the wiring harness that we're going to install inside the tank bag itself. And these are the parts that we're going to use right here today. We're going to start out by going from the battery up out from under the seat along the bottom strap that holds the tank bag on. And to do that, we're going to use the heavy-duty SAE battery lead from Powerlet. Almost everything you're going to see here today is a Powerlet part. This is part number PKT001-24. Right, it's a 24-inch lead. So we're going to hook that from the positive and negative battery terminals, and it's going to run an SAE 2-pin connector up out the front. That's the first part. From there, we're going to hook an 18-inch SAE 2-pin to SAE 2-pin extension cable. So that's an 18-inch. I don't have a part number on that, but I'll put it in the show notes when I go to look it up. Okay, so that's part number 2. From there, we're going to run into the bag a pair of SAE dual splitters. That is part number PAC023 from Powerlet. That's going to let us get more than one power output inside the bag. We're actually going to end up being able to run the 3 devices at a time. Okay, so those will go in next. And then finally off of that, we'll be able to plug in this SAE to coax female adapter kit. And that's going to let us plug our heated gear right into the bag instead of running a separate battery terminal or instead of running out of one of the built-in BMW power outlets. We'll be able to go straight out of that single wiring harness if we need to. Once inside the bag, I've got a couple of these SAE 2-pin to USB ports, and that's what we'll plug our adapters in to charge our iPhone and our iPads, as well as plug the USB adapter to micro USB to charge the Sena Prism camera batteries. We'll be able to do 2 at once in there. Right? So that's really the plan for today. I'll walk you through it step by step, so let's get started. As you can see, I already took the seat off. That's just a matter of using the key to unlock your seat and disconnecting the heated seat harness. There are a pair of pinch connectors near the rear of it. You just squeeze them with your fingers and wiggle that off. It doesn't pop right out because there's a little waterproof seal in there. Just a little bit of wiggling, it should come off pretty easy. If you've got this bike, you should know how to take that seat off anyway, right? So the next thing we need to do is we need to get the wiring harness attached to the battery. The wiring harness is clearly labeled with the red lug being positive and the black lug being negative, right? And when you're standing next to the bike, the negative post is on the left side facing forward. The positive is on the right side. The battery's labeled clearly, and there's also a little piece of red heat shrink tubing over the positive connection, so you shouldn't be confused about which side is plus and which side is minus. The first thing we want to do, and the first thing you should always do when working on electrical in a car or a motorcycle, is disconnect the negative terminal of the battery first. The reason we disconnect negative first is if we do not disconnect the negative and we start taking off the positive terminal, and as we're using that wrench, right, to loosen that bolt, if that wrench should contact anything metal on the bike or on the car, right, it will create a short circuit. And the amount of energy that's stored in the battery will go right through that tool, the wrench or the socket wrench that you're using, and it will get hot, and it could potentially cause a fire or an explosion in the battery, right? It will release a tremendous amount of energy very, very quickly. If you have jewelry on, right, that jewelry, the rings, could get welded onto that wrench and you would not be able to release it potentially. Okay, so please take off your jewelry and always take off the negative battery terminal first for safety. So I'm just going to put that on there and loosen that right up. One turn and that will come right off. Make sure that you hold on to that bolt so it doesn't drop down into the innards of the bike. So I'm going to pull that off and set it aside. And make sure that that negative battery terminal is well clear so it doesn't come back into contact. Notice the red or the positive terminal is covered by a plastic cap that comes off very easily. I can just put my finger underneath it and it will pop right off. I'm going to set that aside as well. Notice the positive terminal, right? I can't get my socket wrench in there. It won't fit. So I have to go to a regular box or open end wrench to get that off. And we'll just go ahead and start loosening that. And this nut does have to come all the way off, the way the lugs are. It's not what they call a spade lug with an open front. It's a full lug. So I need to actually be able to slip that lug on over this battery terminal. In the last episode when I was talking about doing this work, I talked about the fact that I was considering whether or not I should use just the battery direct connection to this harness that is fused. Make sure you use a fused harness, or if I should put a power distribution unit in the bike. And I've elected to run the battery adapter by itself without a power distribution unit because this is the only cable I plan to run. It will be one cable, that's it. If I was going to hook up 3 or 4 different things, this is probably not the best way to do it. You're going to want to get a power distribution fuse block. Right? But for this job, because this is all I'm going to plan on putting on, this is what we'll do for now. If I add other things later, I'll pull this off and I'll go to a power distribution unit. So I've got the nut off for the positive terminal. I'm going to put that positive battery terminal back on from the bike, slip the harness over it, and then replace the washer and then the nut. Again, make sure you don't drop the washer and the nut down into the innards of the bike, especially when you're first trying to thread it back on. It's easy to think that it's on there, but it's really not. All right, there we go. It started. So I'll get that finger tight. And then I'm going to rotate this cable to the rear, right? So it comes out and it clears under the space from that the cap leaves after you put that cap on. Right, so I'm going to get that roughly into position, and then I will come back in with my wrench and tighten that back up. I do not need to worry about shorting this wrench onto the frame or anything else metal because I do not have that negative battery terminal hooked up to anything right now. Make sure this is plenty tight because it will work its way loose over time if you have it too loose. All right, that looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come and put that negative battery terminal on the other side, and we're going to do it the same way. Just center that right over the top of the battery lug hole, put the washer and the bolt back on. The reason that washers are important here is that it keeps the bolt from working its way loose. They are split ring lock washers. It will keep the terminals from coming loose over time, except, oops, I forgot to put the main battery lug back in for the negative, so I have to take that back out. And I'm going to put that in at the bottom, right? So we're going to put this back in and then put the wiring harness over the top. I was so focused on not creating a short circuit, I forgot to put it back on. And again, I'm going to get that finger tight first. Have the wire for the battery harness go out the rear and tighten that down. And there we go. Next thing we need to do is route this cable in a way where the wires don't get bound up when we put the seat on. All right. So I spent a little bit of time figuring out how I wanted to route these cables so that they would not get caught up and pinched when the seat got put on. What I ended up doing is taking the positive cable, putting that protective cap back on, and then splitting the cable It's a two-piece cable, right? So splitting that down the middle and running the positive up the right side of the bike, the negative up the left side, until they were behind those two rubber lugs where the front of the seat attaches. They're running actually behind there. Being behind there, they can't get pinched. And then those cables come together, and they'll come up the front, and I will put another rubber band on to hold that on. Right? It'll all get held in place nice and secure. So we've talked a little bit about holding wires and things in place with rubber bands. You see this red rubber band right here that I put on to solve the case, but at that time you also heard me talking about Ranger bands. Well, all Ranger bands really are is a section cut off of a bicycle inner tube. This is a bike inner tube that I picked up at my local bike shop for free. I just went in there and asked them if they had any tubes that they had replaced for flat tires, and they gave me 3 or 4 of these. But I can come in here and I can just cut sections as I want and make the size band that I need. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take this red band off, and I'm going to replace it with a longer section of inner tube. And this entire strap will fit up inside of there, and I'll be able to run my electrical through there as well. I'll hold everything nice and secure, look good because it's black instead of red, and I think it'll make this a much nicer install. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure it. I'm going to hold it up along here, mark it with my thumb, and come back in here with a pair of scissors and cut it off. Cuts off real easy. I'll do that install and show you what it looks like. So that's what it looks like when the seat is reinstalled with that long section of bicycle inner tube going over the mount, both the mounting strap for the RKA Shiloh bag and also the electrical feed connector ending in the 2-pin SAE. All right, and that's how we're going to feed power right into the bike. Both running up through here together, get it centered up. That'll give you some protection, and it keeps it all together and looking nice. All right, so the next thing we need to do is get the power connected from the 2-pin SAE running through the bike inner tube up into the bike, or into the tank bag. And that is going to come out inside the bag right here through this little port. I'm going to walk you around to the other side and show you exactly what that looks like. All right, so on the left side of the tank bag, there is a Velcro pouch that runs right here. Right? It's along the entire left side of the bag, and it's designed specifically to run power in and out of the bag, and that ends in that small black port that I showed you in just a second ago. Right? So this is how we're going to bring power into the bag. And to do that, we're going to use the 18-inch SAE extension cord. You probably don't need an 18-inch. If you can find a 12, that's probably enough. And all I'm going to do, because it's a little bit easier, is I'm going to put it inside the bag, feed it through that port, reach my hand inside the Velcro, and it's going to pull right out. Okay, it's going to come right out of those Velcro ports. And I'm going to scooch this down towards the bottom of that port, and I can come in here, and it will plug right in. And now I've got power to the inside of the bag. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move inside of the bag. What are we going to look at inside the bag? We are going to look at splitting this cable. Notice I said you really don't need the 18-inch because I've got quite a bit of extra here. There's a cap on it. A lot of the Powerlet stuff has these safety caps. They're great. If you're not using it, you can plug it up so that lint and junk doesn't get into your power connectors. Right? What I usually try to do, at least what I did on my last bike, is I tried to route this around the perimeter of the bottom of the bag. It makes it nice and neat cabling job. Keeps it out of the way as I'm filling the bag with other things. Then I'm going to take the SAE two-way splitter and plug it onto the end. Now I just turned one power connector into 2. I'm going to take the second splitter and plug it into the first. Okay. I've now turned a single connector into 3. I haven't looked if you can find a 3-way or a 4-way splitter that's all in one cable. You might want to go ahead and look for that. It's going to be a little bit less cabling if you can find that out. Right? But this is what we're going to do. I'm going to use one to charge the Sena Prism batteries. I'm going to use the other one to charge the Sena Prism headset. And I'm going to use the third one to charge iPhones and iPads. In order to keep these connectors from pulling apart inside the bag, I'm just going to wrap them with a little electrical tape. It's not really so much for the electrical insulation piece as it is the mechanical resistance that it's going to give me to these plugs pulling apart. I'm not going to put a ton on because I don't want it to get off, be hard to get off later if I need to reverse this, but I'm going to give it one good nice tight solid wrap of electrical tape. And then I've cut another section of that inner tube material, and I'm just going to feed that all through there, cover it up, dress the wires, again give it a little bit of a tighter grip to keep it from pulling apart, and that'll all be great. All right, and the last piece that really is part of the wiring infrastructure is the SAE to coaxial female connector, which I'm going to use to be able to plug my heated gear right into the bag. And to do that, I'm going to take one of the SAE plugs off of the longest splitter that I've looped the cable back. As after it comes through the power port, I loop it back down towards the driver's position, around the exterior of the bag, and then back into the power exit port on the inside of the bag. And I'm going to plug that coaxial cable connector right into there. Just like I did on the other connector, I am going to put a little tape on that to hold it together, so if I get off the bike and I'm plugged in, potentially, I do not yank that apart. And I'm going to feed that down through the port, and it's going to exit through that Velcro port that I showed you earlier. And there you have it, coming right out of that power port. Another thing that I wanted to do is, you notice the RKA Shiloh bag has got these tabs on the front. These tabs are designed that you can hook a shoulder strap on if you want to put it over your shoulder when you leave the bike. I've never used the shoulder strap. I just used the grab handle. So I'm going to take this power port just to keep it in place. I can actually push it through that little hole, and it's going to keep that right in place. And then I'm going to make sure that that Velcro closure is really tight around that cable feed area. And that's it. The infrastructure cabling on this project is done. All we have to do next is to install the accessories. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do with the two SAE ports that are in the bag is install these battery tender SAE to USB adapters onto them. They only go on one way, just like the cables, so we'll get those plugged on. And I'm doing that because the accessories that I'm going to put on the inside of the bag are all USB based. So that's the first step. The second step is I want to get this Sena Prism battery charger mounted to this Velcro area that I've got in the front of this bag. Okay, but if I do it the way that I'm holding it now, you'll notice the plug exits out of the top, and it's going to create a problem when I go to close the bag. So I'm actually going to want to mount it with the power cable down, and I'm going to do that with a Velcro piece of tape that you see here. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. As you can see, I installed a big piece of adhesive Velcro to the back of that charger. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that rubber band that I took off the strap earlier, and I'm going to put it around here. Because as this, we ride around with this and this gets jostled, I don't want the batteries to pop out. So I'll use this rubber band just to hold these batteries in place. And then I'm going to take it and put it pretty low in the bag and Velcro it onto that front strip. I'll now be able to pop my Prism batteries in and out of there to keep them charging so I can vlog while I'm on my trips. So that's one thing. Then I can take this USB cable and plug it in when I need it to be powered, and we'll be golden on that. The other main cable that I'm going to run is a USB to lightning cable, and I'm going to plug that into the remaining USB port, and I will be able to plug that in and charge my iPhone or iPad while I'm driving. The other thing I've done, depending on where I park for the night, is I can leave my headsets and my batteries inside the tank bag, because this is a direct wire to the battery. The bike doesn't need to be on for these things to be charged. If I go in somewhere for lunch where I can keep an eye on my bike, I can see it from the window, I'll take my Sena 20S headset, leave it in the bag, and let it charge while I'm eating during lunchtime. But that kind of is a risk evaluation that you have to take on what you're willing to leave in the bag or not. But this is powered all the time with a direct connection to the battery. And that's the project, guys. Thanks for watching. This was a great, easy project, I think. If the application of the clear brow was a 4 and the installation of the bag was a 1, this is probably about a 2. There is a little bit of electrical work, so you got to watch out for shocks and starting fires. Make sure you use a wiring harness that's got a proper fuse in it so that you don't end up having electrical problems with your bike down the road. Make sure that if you like these videos and these how-tos with the K1600 that you subscribe to the channel up here. We really need your support. We're trying to get to our first 100 subscribers. And at that point, hopefully we'll kind of get the ball rolling and we'll take off. I've had some really great commenters. Keep it up. I love having the dialogue. I want to answer any questions that you've got. I'm heading out on a trip the first week of October. I'm not exactly sure where yet. I tend to wait till the last minute to see where the weather looks good. But I'm looking at West Virginia as a possible location. We're looking back at the Northeast, New Hampshire, Vermont, maybe Maine, upstate New York. And our third option is kind of out Northwest, Montana, and the Dakotas, just depending on where the weather looks good. If you're from any of those places and you've got some must-see things, good places to eat, roads to ride, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until then, thanks for watching.
Down the street, will you take me to get some